Hey, how's it going, everyone? How's that volume? Can you hear me at the back? Cool. Awesome. Well, hey, my name's Ben, and I'm here today because I wanted to pose the question, are we setting ourselves up in DeFi for a 2008-style financial crisis? And a little bit about myself and my background and why I'm interested in this question. I started my career in TradFi, and I saw how those businesses were run. That's what inspired me to join crypto, and I've been in crypto, investing and experimenting since 2016. I've been in the industry full-time since 2019, and in my first role was managing a $100 million crypto treasury, deploying into various DeFi strategies, and since then have set up my own company, raised a pre-seed, we're still in stealth, but wanted to reflect on all of those experiences to try and provide some insights and ask some hard questions about what we're building in DeFi. And so the TLDR of my presentation is I think DeFi is starting to show some cracks. Much of what I think we're building in DeFi feels like a crypto casino. And I think many of the products that are being built in DeFi right now are simply rebranded and repackaged TradFi products. And in fact, many of those products are what led to the 2008 financial crisis. Now, of course, all of this is ironic because Bitcoin explicitly was launched as a reaction to the 2008 crisis, and Satoshi referenced the crisis in the Genesis block of Bitcoin. But that said, I do think the meta is finally shifting away from the crypto casino, and we've seen that just last week, starting with meme coins. So I think now is an important opportunity to reflect on some of those things and talk about what might a better DeFi look like. So I'm looking to do that today. So why do I care about this topic? As I said, I started my career in TradFi and I saw inside some of the world's largest financial institutions, banks, wealth managers, all those sort of things. And I saw how their businesses were run, and I saw the bad incentives, and I saw how they treated their customers. So that's what originally inspired me to want to work in crypto. That same insight, that same experience is also what's leading me to be a bit skeptical about what's being built right now, though, because much of what is being built looks and feels like what I saw inside of TradFi. And so I want to make sure that we don't just repeat those same things in DeFi, in crypto. And specifically, I think a lot of what we're seeing right now looks and feels like 2008. So we're seeing funds and investors chasing ever higher yields. We're seeing innovators building overly complex products in order to address those yields. We have experts telling us the math doesn't lie, don't worry. We've got power brokers and mercenary capital that are holding the purse strings and deciding where this capital gets deployed and fueling many of these strategies. And in terms of systems, we've got assets and risks being repackaged and rehypothecated. And what I mean by that is assets being taken, repackaged and passed on to other people in order to generate higher yields. That's what we saw with collateralized debt obligations, which was the key thing that led to the 2008 crisis. We've got tides of capital that are chasing yields waiting to be deployed. We've got new assets driving up the risk-free rate. And what I mean by that, to be specific, is we look at Athena, for example. The market sort of describes it as risk-free. They're paying 9% APY. And so if I'm an asset allocator, and if I believe that Athena truly is risk-free at 9%, then I'm looking at any other opportunity. If there's an opportunity paying 5%, why would I put my capital into that when I could put it into Athena at 9%? Now, what that means is that's driving the required return for other projects higher. 9% is now kind of the minimum if you accept the premise that it's risk-free. And so you see projects and protocols and investors driving and chasing ever higher yields with mostly more leverage in order to beat those rates. And you hear people saying, this time it's different. It's crypto, it's different. Now, whenever I hear someone say this time it's different, that raises red flags for me. And specifically, what we're seeing is old risks and old products simply repackaged with new language. So we've got a basis trade stablecoin. I mean, what is that? Let's be honest. It's an off-chain hedge fund. Yes, it's been tokenized and it's put on chain, but fundamentally the strategies that are being used are just a hedge fund. Is it a stable coin? I mean, that's debatable. You could make an argument about that. But those strategies have risk. If the funding rate turns negative, there can be a risk of asset loss. Is that stable? I would argue not. We've got restaking. What is that? That's simply risk rehypothecation, which leads to a contagion risk. As I said, that's what collateralized debt obligations were in 2008. We've got looping and yield amplification. What does that mean? They're just two giant euphemisms for a lot of leverage. We're just borrowing a lot of money and using that to power higher yields. There's nothing really innovative about that. That's been happening for thousands of years as long as finance has existed. But that's also one of the things that led to the 2008 crisis. We've got things that are quote-unquote fully backed. Are those things fully backed? In some cases, yes. In some cases, no. But even where they are fully backed, if the asset isn't liquid or that liquidity isn't available when you need it, that also can lead to contagion. We saw that with usual money. I mean, the underlying assets were there, they were good for it, but at a time of market stress in January when those assets were required, the liquidity wasn't there and a depeg happened. And finally, decentralized. We call a lot of things decentralized. That's why we're supposed to care about this industry as builders. But, I would argue most things aren't decentralized. We see frequently withdrawals get paused, bridges get paused when hacks or exploits occur. We saw that over the weekend, last week. And yeah, that proves these things aren't decentralized if a small group of people can push a button and these protocols turn off. And even more systemically, I'd say at the industry level, we like to talk about ourselves as a decentralized industry, but in reality, there's a core group of people, that's early whales, early founders, important projects, large mega funds. They control the capital. They control the capital, the TVL that's deployed in these protocols. It's a sort of uncomfortable truth. We don't like to say it. One of the reactions to TradFi or the criticisms of TradFi was these billionaires that, lurk behind the scenes and pull the strings. Now, they're a different set of billionaires in crypto, but we have just replicated the same systems. So in many ways, I'd say that the things that we're reacting to in TradFi exist in crypto and exist in DeFi as well. And so, why does that matter and how does that impact the industry? And I guess I want to caveat all of this by saying, yes, we're capitalists, we're operating in a capitalist system, and it's okay to want to make money and chase higher yields, but that has an impact on the industry. And specifically, when we look at something that's really core to the Ethereum protocol, like staking, you'll hear people say, why would I want to, stake for 3% APY when I could earn 10x that in XYZ, whatever the latest fad is? And what that means is that DeFi is riddled with bad incentives. There's increasingly convoluted ways to generate more yield. There's kind of eye-watering headline numbers, 10%, 50%, 1,000% yields. And these projects are having to do that to compete for attention in this kind of attention economy that we have in crypto. A lot of those headline numbers are powered by unsustainable airdrops, incentives, bribing mercenary capital, bribing yield farmers to come to your protocol. But as soon as those incentives dry up, all the capital leaves. And all of this is often powered by increasing leverage as well, which is as old as finance itself, as I said, but it's just rebranded with jargon and fancy words in crypto. And all of this leads to contagion risk. And so I just wanted to make a brief aside, provide a real example that I encountered in crypto. So 2022, this is before Terra blew up, this is before Three Arrows, Celsius, FTX, all that stuff. As I said, I was managing a $100 million crypto treasury. And I had really well-respected, really smart, known people in the crypto industry coming up to me and saying, hey, Ben, you're being negligent with your company's money if you're not putting it into UST. It's paying 20%. It's risk-free. just go and do it. And when I would challenge people who told me that, there'd be these kind of hand-wavy explanations like, oh, it's algorithmic, and oh, you can look at it on-chain, look at the code, it's fine. There's these crypto economic incentives that make it safe. XYZ fund that is the smartest fund in the industry, they're deployed in it, and if they're doing it, you should do it too. Now, obviously all of this turned out to be untrue, but what I think it's indicative of is this kind of tendency to have hand-wavy explanations for stuff that, if you peel it back, it's really quite simple. It was a Ponzi-nomic scheme. We used a lot of fancy names around it, but ultimately it was unsustainable. Now, that's obvious in hindsight, And I won't claim to be smart enough to have like pinpointed the specific mechanisms or the specific risks in UST, but something about it just kind of felt off to me. The vibe felt wrong, and so, I decided to stay out of it. And what I would say is that a lot of things that are getting built in DeFi right now kind of feel the same to me. They just the vibe just feels a little bit wrong. Like, can I tell you what the specific thing is? No, but I think it's an opportunity to kind of reevaluate what we're building and what's powering what we're building and ask ourselves some hard questions. And, I like this meme. I always come back to it, but where does the yield come from? Like, if you can't get a straight answer to that question in 1 or 2 sentences in a succinct way, I think that should raise some alarm bells. And so, like, why now? Why did I want to give this presentation now? Well, there's a couple of reasons. The first is that the stakes have never been higher. There's more TVL, there's more assets locked up in DeFi than ever before, but also we've got real-world institutions participating in DeFi. We've got banks, we've got hedge funds, we've got governments, we've got presidents. And if some of these actors get burned, that could have lasting impact on the credibility of the industry and hurt us all. I mean, we just saw that just last week with the Libra scandal and the Argentinian president. I mean, it was a failed thing. And in doing so, that's like massively changed the meta around meme coins just, in the space of a day. And, if you want to call meme coins an industry, you'd say that's, impacted the credibility of that industry. Now, if we could see a president, name your president, deployed into DeFi and something goes wrong, you could see a similar thing, reputationally rippling through DeFi. And also because of all the capital that's, tied up in there and all the leverage that's been deployed, that makes the impact of a black swan event, even more severe as this leverage gets unwound and things ripple through the industry. But more positively, I'd say the meta is at a turning point. The Libra controversy last week, you can finally see people coming and speaking out about how toxic meme coins are. I mean, I would argue it should have come sooner than that, and why did it take people so long? But, there's starting to be a questioning of these crypto casino style dynamics. So I think in DeFi, we have an opportunity to proactively address this and try and make things better before a crisis blows up. So that's what I wanted to do. And so to do that and to, I guess, make it more tangible what a blow-up might look like, I wanted to walk through a hypothetical. And I wanted to caveat all of this by saying I'm not, suggesting that this is likely or, even maybe likely, and I'm not criticising any specific protocol or restaking in general, but I just wanted to do this to make it tangible and illustrate how something could ripple through DeFi with very similar dynamics to what we saw happen in 2008. So with those caveats, let's just imagine that a popular LRT is has large exposure to an AVS, and that AVS gets slashed badly. Now, specifically why this happens, it might have been an attack, it might have been an exploit, might have been a mistake, someone was running their software wrong. The specific reason doesn't really matter, and in fact, by definition, a black swan event is kind of unpredictable or unknowable, but let's explore what happens next. So the expected path and the path that we all hope for is that the collateral gets slashed, but that is contained to that collateral. And because markets are liquid, the only people that lose money are the restakers. But an alternate path, which is something that I'm concerned about, is that there isn't enough liquidity. So let's say, for example, that staked ETH is the collateral asset. Lido has a finite amount of ETH on its platform for redemptions on the smart contract, and let's say that gets exhausted straight away. So now liquidity pools on DeFi are getting drawn upon. And as that's happening, there starts to be a price divergence between ETH and staked ETH. LPs start to realise that and start to withdraw their capital out of these pools. Price divergence continues, more liquidity is withdrawn, and suddenly what we thought was 500 million of liquidity is 50 million of liquidity. But even that is not enough. This sort of depegging starts to widen, staked ETH is trading at a discount, and then suddenly oracles start reporting this to DeFi protocols, lending protocols. And as I said, all this leverage is built into the system. There's all these strategies that are building on top of essentially just borrowing money and levering up. And as a result, these strategies start to be liquidated because the collateral asset is reducing in value. So there's auto liquidations. That ripples through the industry. Assets keep getting liquidated. There's downward pressure on all assets, and suddenly the entire DeFi ecosystem's been impacted. And this is obviously exactly what happened in 2008 in TradFi. We had collateralized debt obligations trading at a discount to what they were supposedly worth. Things got liquidated, liquidity dried up in the system, and suddenly that rippled through the entire global financial system. So yeah, this is our 2025 edition of the 2008 death spiral, replicated in DeFi, using the tools that we created that were supposedly a reaction to 2008. So what was bad about that setup specifically? It was a reliance on centralized protocols and sort of finite pools of liquidity, reliance on fleeting liquidity that we think was there but was not necessarily there. There was massive leverage, contagion, and cascading losses. So how would we break that death spiral, potentially? One way would be to have guaranteed liquidity provided by the L1. And luckily, what we do is, well, what we will have is that soon via the Petra upgrade on Ethereum. Petra-powered withdrawals provide instant liquidity and would allow validators to be drawn down trustlessly from 2048 ETH to 32 ETH. So in an event where such a liquidation was occurring, you could get that liquidity powered trustlessly by the Ethereum protocol itself. And what that means is the liquidation would be orderly, it's powered by the L1, and that contains the losses within the restaking ecosystem and doesn't cascade across DeFi more generally. And what's better about this setup is that there's no reliance on centralized intermediaries, there's no reliance on market makers or specific centralized entities sitting behind smart contracts. There's guaranteed withdrawals powered by the ETH L1, and it mitigates contagion, and as a result, there's no cascading losses. So, audible sigh of relief, that's much better. And I guess to kind of wrap this up, I think DeFi can do better, and I want DeFi to do better. I think the first thing we all need to do in this room is be more skeptical and don't believe your own bullshit. As I said, I think there's a lot of pretty vanilla TradFi products that are wrapped up in a lot of jargon and mumbo-jumbo, but really it's just leverage and it's just risk. Just because it's on-chain doesn't make it better inherently, so be more skeptical and don't believe your own bullshit. We need on-chain and protocol-powered liquidity. We need it trustless. I think projects need to keep it simple and be more transparent with what they're building, their risks, and where the yield comes from. We should be prioritizing real protocol revenue instead of Ponzi's and unsustainable airdrop incentives. And we need to be building products that people don't need to be bribed to use. They should be using it because it provides them real utility. And we just need to be realistic about risks. But all of that's hard, and I can say that as a founder, that projects are competing against the crypto casino. There's a finite amount of attention out there, and there's a finite amount of capital. And if you put a headline on your website that says 80% APY risk-free, there's not a lot of due diligence that goes into that, and those projects are the ones that get the attention. So the incentives that we've set up is why the industry is the way it is. And just a brief shill, what we're building is a new LST that we believe embodies these values, and the reason why we're building it is because we were concerned by what we were seeing in the industry. And we're calling it RockSolid, a new liquid staking token. What makes RockSolid different is that there's no leverage built into it, there's no restaking. We're offering the highest APY on the market, but we're doing that without adding additional risk and only exposing users to staking, nothing else. And importantly, as I mentioned earlier around Petra, we're building for that. So with our LST, there'll be permissionless instant withdrawals. So you don't need to trust us as a team. You don't need to trust our smart contracts for liquidity. It'll be there in the case of market turmoil. You can access that liquidity. And we're supporting solo validators because we care about Ethereum and we care about decentralization. We're trying to take share away from these centralized entities that are frankly bad for Ethereum. So yeah, as I said, we're still in stealth. We haven't officially launched, but just wanted to give you all in this room a brief teaser. If you want to find out more, we're launching in Q2. You can follow me on Twitter, follow our company Twitter account there, and that QR code will take you to our website and all of our socials, so you can follow us and get early access. But yeah, thanks for having me today. It was great giving this talk, and My DMs are open, so feel free to DM me on Twitter or come grab me and we can continue the conversation in the room after this. All right, thanks everyone.